And three. Good afternoon, my friends. My name is Laurie Brown, and I am the programs director at Cibolo Nature Center and Farm. And I would like to introduce you guys to our first Zoom for the conference. That's an all virtual workshop for the Texas Pollinator Bio-Blitz. And so this is going to be about a 2-hour class tonight. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So if you guys know the chat feature, you're welcome to do that one. If you have a burning question, I'm going to be your MC tonight. So feel free, you can message me privately or send it out to the whole group. This is a pretty small group right now, so it'll be kind of an intimate and fun conversation that we have. And also, if you guys have questions along the way, we're really, really super happy to work with you guys on that one. So like we said beforehand, you're welcome to turn your screens on, but this one is going to be recorded and going to be sent out to, other folks, which will be pretty neat. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys to our other two presenters, which is going to be Minna Paul, who is our Education and Volunteer Engagement Coordinator at San Antonio River Authority, and of course, Craig Hensley, who is our Nature Trackers biologist for Texas Parks and Wildlife. So it'll be pretty awesome. We just have another person entering the room here. Give you guys a little rundown of what tonight's going to look like. We're going to have a pretty full list of things, and we're going to start with an intro about the Texas Bio-Blitz with Craig. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Craig whenever he's ready to share his screen. So.
Okay. Let's see. Yes. All right, well, hopefully you can see my screen right there.
Whoops.
Are you able to, wait, yeah, there you go. Can you see it okay?
There you are.
All right, very good. It's nice to be here this evening, and what I want to do is I'm going to spend about 25 minutes or so with you talking a little bit about what we do and how you can get involved with the 2020 version of the Texas Pollinator Bio-Blitz. That's a statewide event, and so we're just going to dive right in here. First of all, what is a Bio-Blitz? A Bio-Blitz is basically an opportunity for people to gather and to take basically a snapshot of what's going on in the natural world in that particular location at that time. So it can be a very small Bio-Blitz. For example, it could be your backyard. You might do a one-day Bio-Blitz where you go out and try to document everything that you see in your yard. It could be like the Texas Pollinator Bio-Blitz, and almost about a 2.5-week adventure, if you will, where people all over the state are invited to go out and log photos of pollinators and the flowers that they pollinate. And all of that information is then shared in one project, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But basically, it's going out, documenting nature, getting a snapshot in time, and you can do it for as long or as little as you want to. You can have it as large or as small an area. And the tool that is used for a lot of these Bio-Blitzes is the app called I-Naturalist. We're going to spend a little time reviewing that, give you kind of a quick overview of that in case you don't know a whole lot about it. So let's keep moving. So the Texas Pollinator Bio-Blitz, this is an event hosted by Texas Parks and Wildlife. It starts tomorrow morning. You can see there when I copied this screenshot right there, it was 7 hours away. It's a little closer now. It starts at midnight tonight, and then goes for almost 2 weeks, as I mentioned, all the way through the 18th, or a little bit more, I guess, than 2 weeks. And there's all kinds of activities. There's daily challenges that you can do. You can log into Texas Parks and Wildlife or do a search for Pollinator Bio-Blitz, and it'll give you all kinds of information. It's a great way to engage children outdoors, looking at pollinators. Hopefully everybody knows how important that they are, but they have daily challenges, basically photographing. I think tomorrow morning, tomorrow's first challenge is to take a picture of a brightly colored pollinator, and there's a second challenge, take a picture of a night pollinator. Well, good luck with that one, but you could certainly try it. There are moths out there and other things that might be pollinating tomorrow night, who knows. But that goes on for till the 18th. If you do take pictures, you put it on Instagram or Facebook or join our project, or even when you take that picture and join it in iNaturalist, is actually going to automatically upload into this project. So that's the nice thing about it. Once you do it on iNaturalist, you don't have to do anything more special. It'll actually go in. And one of the reasons we're doing this statewide is with the Texas Nature Trackers program, we actually look for what are called SGCNs, or species of greatest conservation need. And everybody around the state can help identify some of those. In fact, 2 of our bumblebees are SGCNs. We're concerned about them. I'll show you a picture of them tonight. And also there are many others, almost 20 other different kinds of bees that are in trouble in the state of Texas. So we want to try to document as many as we can, and we're asking the general public to become engaged with that. So as I mentioned, we're going to be using the you're going to use the iNaturalist app, and it's a very fun. It's like walking around with a nature encyclopedia in your hand. But iNaturalist was created by some graduate students, believe it or not, out in California, and is now a global phenomenon, really. It's a free download onto your phone. They have a website. I'll show you a picture of that here in just a moment. And it's a way for people to get out and engage in nature, and also then to help everybody learn about nature. So it's just this giant community of people that have something for nature and want to share that love of nature. The 2 primary goals for iNaturalist are to connect people to nature, and then also hopefully generate valuable scientific data about the flora and fauna of the United States, and actually globally now. And that's really become a valuable tool for agencies like Texas Parks and Wildlife. Reason for that, every time you take a picture and post it to iNaturalist, it's creating what's known as a digital voucher. And all of these little dots are different organisms that have been documented through iNaturalist. For conservation planning, we can take that information, and it helps us find out, are these animals or plants still in these different places that we thought they were? Are their populations maybe expanding? Is the range expanding over time? All kinds of scientific data we can get from this effort, and all it requires is the app and a thumb to take pictures. And everybody out there is taking a gazillion pictures anyway. I've seen those phones loaded with thousands of images. Why not do nature? Because anyway, it's all the way around us. So just to kind of show you, I printed this off a couple of days ago. Over 50 million people globally have used iNaturalist. That number continues to grow on a daily basis. You can see that there are over 1 million, or observations, I should say, over 1 million observers globally. Over almost 300,000 species have been documented through iNaturalist. In Texas, because it's such a powerful tool, we have over 3.5 million observations by over 77,000 people. And Texas is a big state, so we think we can get a lot more people out there doing a lot more documenting of our flora and fauna. And in fact, it's so valuable to us. In 2013, the Texas Nature Trackers program partnered with iNaturalist and began hosting projects. And those projects basically are to help us connect the naturalist community through iNaturalist. First of all, you're going to learn things about what's around you, and you're going to be contributing valuable data. We then take that data and we process it and then pass it on to the research and conservation community, and so that they can then take that data and learn more about the flora and fauna, as I mentioned, and then hopefully that helps us with conservation efforts to make sure those plants and animals don't disappear. Our goals are similar to iNaturalist goals, actually, is we're trying to grow and enrich the naturalist community that's out there, the citizen science, community science group that's out there, and then also to contribute to research, as I mentioned, so that we can have good conservation. We do have our own webpage right here. You can just type in Texas Nature Trackers. It'll take you to what we do there. We have our projects. We have 12 projects that we help oversee. Everything from the herps of Texas, frogs and toads and snakes, to eagle nests across the state, and of course the bees and wasps of Texas, which is a shared partnership with another agency, and that project is really, really valuable. To give you an idea of how successful we've been, the Bees and Wasps Texas project has over 88,000 observations already. You can see the numbers for all of these other projects totaling almost 500,000 observations statewide. So, and that's just within our projects, many more obviously beyond the scope of that. So we're real pleased with that. We're trying to engage more people, and we hope that you'll come along for the ride. Well, this is the Bees and Wasps of Texas project. Again, 88,000 observations, 12,000 people across the state observing and contributing to this project. And as you're going to learn tonight, these pollinators are critical to our survival and to the survival of the natural world, frankly. So just to kind of show you how citizen science data really can be valuable, this is just an example, obviously not a pollinator, but some research a few years ago on spotted skunks trying to understand where they were, how they were doing. They did a lot of field work with camera traps and track plates and live traps. They got very little return. They set out things in 10 counties. They only got 12 detections in 4 counties. At the same time, however, they went out and created an iNaturalist project, encouraging people to document things. They got 85 records submitted, 24 confirmed eastern spotted skunks in 21 counties. So they went from 4 counties with all the field research to 21 counties, including 6 counties where they'd never been recorded before. So that extra information gives conservationists a better understanding of what's going on with this small, pretty fascinating little skunk. Another example of how iNaturalist can be a powerful tool, here's the crawfish frog. This is another SGCN, species of greatest conservation need. All of these red dots are where they've been found in the past. iNaturalist users are helping to document that they still exist in a few areas. They're also finding out that there are new locations that we didn't know about for the crawfish frog, and that's through community science efforts with iNaturalist. So again, very powerful tool for conservation in Texas. So how does iNaturalist work? Basically, you download the app, you create an account, doesn't cost you anything. You record observations using your iPhone or your Android. Right now, most of it is through photos. You can record sounds, but you got to do that a little bit differently. You share that with the iNaturalist community. Even if you don't know what it is, there are people out there that will help you identify it, and then you can share back and forth what's going on with what you're seeing wherever you are. Basically, the real process of it, though, the first thing, let me go back one slide here. So first of all, you got to know who you are. So you got to create that account, as we mentioned. You need to take some kind of evidence of what you saw, and usually that's a photo and sometimes a sound. One of the nice things about this, where you saw it, if you have your location services on your cell phone, it's going to record that for you, so you don't have to do too much work, though, although we would like to have it be very accurate for our purposes. And then when you saw it, the nice thing about your phones, it's going to date it and timestamp it, so that's great. And then you can try to figure out what it is, or you can share it with the community to have them help you figure out what it is you're looking at. So pretty powerful, pretty neat tool. Who needs a nature encyclopedia when you got iNaturalist now? So just a very quick run through of the phone app, just so that you know, this is what your screen's going to look like. The Apple is on the left, the Android on the right. If you're going to take an image, you can either do it through your camera on your phone, or you can do it directly through iNaturalist. So if it's iNaturalist, you're going to use, you can hit this button down here on the iPhone that says observe. Over here, it's a plus sign. You take the picture. Here's what's really great. You can add more pictures by clicking there or clicking here on where it says the little box with the plus next to the photograph. Then you can actually click on what did you see? And the neat thing about what did you see is it's going to give you suggestions of an answer. So it may not know the exact species all the time. It's not perfect, but large part of the time, it actually is a very powerful tool for identifying what's in front of you. If that's what you think it is, if it matches up nicely, you can choose that. And then you'll notice the name of that has now been populated. The other thing is you can check your location, make sure that that it says you are where you are, and then check your accuracy to make sure. For us, we use 500 meters as kind of a cutoff. And then you can also record if it's a plant in particular. whether it's a cultivated plant or not. It puts it in a different category than a wild plant, but that doesn't make it less valuable, just a different status. And then once you're done with that, there's some other things you can do, but we don't have time. You can attend one of our workshops where we go into all this detail if you're really interested through our Texas Nature Trackers program. But you go ahead and hit share, or you hit the check mark up there, and it actually is going to upload it. And there it is. You've got your new observation, and now you're ready to go on to the next one. So that's as simple as it is, really. It works very well. I will tell you, as I mentioned earlier, it's not always perfect. If you look right here, you can see, hopefully you know that those are 3 black vultures. This actually happened, by the way. When it was loaded up, because the pictures were a little ways away, these were the choices. So just to show you it's not perfect, the American black bear, the American bison, turns out the bear disagrees that those are in fact not bears. So it kind of shows you it's imperfect, but the more we add to it, the better it gets, the more improved it becomes, and for all of us. So it's a benefit. And then the website looks like this. You can go and type in iNaturalist. You can go to your account. All kinds of things that you can do right here. So keep that in mind. So you can look at, you can help people ID things. You can look at your observations. You can join projects so you can contribute your observations to those projects, similar to the projects that I just showed you with our Texas Nature Trackers program. I also want to show you this. This is another app through iNaturalist, but it's for people under the age of 13. It's called Seek, and because of privacy protection laws, they don't want this. This doesn't require anybody to share information, which is great. Some adults love this even better than iNaturalist, because when you point your phone at something, it suggests an ID right off the bat. This data does not load into iNaturalist, but it's something you can walk around, take pictures if you're trying to get your children or grandchildren engaged in the natural world. Everybody's got a phone these days. Get them out there and start taking pictures. They can learn a lot. Great science lesson tool, whether you're homeschooler or in public school, it doesn't matter. And anybody can use this app, and it's very, very simple to use. All right, well, I'm going to stop talking there. I'm going to turn it back over to Laurie. I'm going to see if I can find out where I can stop sharing my screen here and let her introduce her topic, and then I will see you back here in just a little bit. So I think I turned it back over to you, Laurie. Uh-oh, but you're muted. Hey, Laurie, you're muted, just so you know.
Thank you on that one. I remember I did half a Zoom one time. I was muted half the time. So do y'all see my screen?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you much. Perfect. Awesome, guys. So one of the things that I want to talk to you guys about is a little bit about pollination and why it really matters. So what we're going to launch into today is to talk a little bit about pollinators kind of on an individual basis and why they're important. And one of the things I wanted to focus on, my work has been global when looking at pollinator work. And so I work with pollinators around the world. So some of the research that I've done is trying to get people to understand really what the significance of pollinators and why everybody seems to be putting such a huge emphasis on it. So hopefully this is relevant and fun to all of you guys. The one thing I want to show you guys is kind of the different varieties of pollinators that are out there and talk to them a little bit. So the first one that we have is a fly, and this is a really tiny little weird little fly called a midge. And this is a fly called a chocolate midge. And it's a really important here because they are the only pollinator in the world for chocolate. So if you didn't know why these were really exciting to you, now you know. This one's a hawk moth. So we've got hawk moths that are pretty amazing pollinators. So night flying moths and things which pollinate plants like cashews, not this particular species in this moth, but moths that are very similar to these, are the only pollinators for a lot of plants like cashews. We have this very beautiful green bee, which this beautiful green colored bee is the vanilla orchid bee. So this is vanilla orchid's major pollinator, is this really weird bee, and it's an endangered species. So to let you guys know that, you know, our chocolate midge and our green bees are both in trouble right now. So we're looking at a lot of things that we can do. We have over here, we've got a beautiful little flower beetle inside of a flower, and beetles are a really cool pollinator. They not often thought of as pollinators, but they're really great because they can crash land into a flower, get really covered in pollen, and then leave to another place. So they're an incidental pollinator for a lot of plants, but big, wide, open, musky smelling flowers are their favorites. So these guys, you'll see them a lot in very big, you know, wildflowers. Oftentimes you'll see them in large sunflowers. But really one of the major pollinators for beetles that's really kind of cool things is pond lilies. So looking at these, down here is a numata. This is a butterfly, and they are a pollinator for Brazil nuts, which is pretty neat when you're looking at those. Then we have a wasp, which a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, wasp, oh no. We don't want to conserve wasp. Who wants to do that? Well, these little fig wasps are incidentally the only pollinators for figs. We still don't know how to hand pollinate figs or any of those things. So you really do have to rely on wasp to do that for you. If you're a tequila fan or an agave nectar fan, you have to usually think a bat for that. This is a lesser long-nosed bat, which is one of the pollinators for agave cactuses. So, and they're pretty special. And then at the end, one of my favorites, this is the violet saberwing, or the somberwing from Costa Rica. And this is a banana pollinator. So wild bananas and our cultivar bananas are pollinated by bees, but also really big, really cool hummingbirds. So this is kind of what we're looking at when we look at just a general span of a lot of our pollinators. There are over 2,000 different species on this earth that are looked at as pollinating animals, and only about 1,000 of which are vertebrates, so like bats and birds. All the rest of them are insects. So you really do have to think, you know, and thank insects for all of the things that we're looking at today. And we can't often think of, we're not going to mention every single thing on here, but really the heavyweight champ in the pollinator world, especially when we look at food supplies and crops and everything else that really have impact on humans, are bees. And honeybees and their kindred in the Apis genus are really really one of the lead creatures in these. So without these guys, almost nothing is possible. So right now, if we lose pollinators, we've lost chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. That's pretty much all of your major ice cream groups, and who knows what else. So kind of a crazy statistic that's come out is that honeybees in particular pollinate 70% of, or 70 out of the 100 top crops in the world, which is 90% of the world's nutrition and 90% of the world's food supply when we look at that. So if we lost pollinators, our world would look quite a bit different, even to the point where we're losing like what our world would look like without pollinators and without bees. So I'm going to show you guys a few really crazy slides of what our life would look like if we didn't have honeybees, or we didn't, or first, obviously that one slide that we had with the chocolate and the cashews and the Brazil nuts, those are a lot of other pollinators, but bees would look probably the bleakest if we lost them. So as we go through, let me move my thing here. As we go through, this was produced by Whole Foods, where they literally cored out the grocery store. So this is kind of your produce and dairy without bees. Life is, and your choices are getting pretty boring. Xerxes Society went in and helped Whole Foods and said, hey, we're going to take some before and after shots and put up some really cool things. So, you're looking at, wholesale removal of most of your crops. So we're looking at these things. Even more bleak is your dessert desserts and bakery. Oh my gosh, those sad little tins with nothing left in them. So if you wanted to know why pollinators really matter to you, here you go. They really do matter when looking at that. And of course, I think one of the most important things about pollinators to really talk about is flowers, and not only flowers for food, but our native flowers and our cultivar flowers that really can't survive without pollination by insects, and by bats and birds too. We're not discrediting any vertebrate that's a pollinator, but definitely these invertebrate pollinators are really the ones that are really doing the most work here on these things. So from a conservation perspective, a lot of folks asking, well, how are pollinators doing? And pollinators overall are on a huge decline. Insects are in an even bigger decline. We're looking at a 41% decline in global insects. I think that we did a count, and I think it was Xerxes Society and a few other different societies were trying to count how many insects we had in the world, and we were up to 16 quintillion insects. So if we're losing 41% of 16 quintillion insects, that's quite a few, just to give you a bit. And that's a lot of bird food, that's a lot of bat food, that's a lot of animal food that's out there that we're losing for a whole ecosystem as well. But if we look here and looking at all of the invertebrates that are having them, or the insects that are having the most endangered species and the most species lost, if we look right up there, butterflies, beetles, bees, and flies, and most of those being pollinating flies, are all on this list of being threatened and endangered. And all of these, ironically, are flying insects when we look at the decline. So in comparative with vertebrate species, we're at a 22% decline. So we're, the world's having some issues. So looking at, the reasons why they're disappearing, we're looking at, intensive agricultural reprocessing of the land as being one of the biggest problems for these animals. And then right butting up to that is pesticides. So looking at ways that we can, grow our food and become more sustainable, is always important within our landscaping and within our everything you do. Voting with your dollar to help pollinators is always incredibly important. So that's my presentation, and I am going to pass it back to Craig. So Craig, if you want to fight back the presentation, you can certainly have it. I think it's you next, right? Are we looking from here? Yes.
Yes, it is.
Alrighty.
Okay. All right. So Laurie talked about some of this stuff, but I want to run through it real quickly. Got a few pictures to show you here, and then we're going to turn it over to Minna. But as she was talking about the importance of pollinators, a few other things to keep in mind: that an estimated 75% of flowering plants require a pollinator. And of course, a third of those species provide humans food. So again, re-emphasizing how important our food supply is based on the pollinators that are out there. And the best estimates are about 1 in every 3 bites of food or drink that you take require a pollinator. So really, really, really important. Pollinators feed birds, as she mentioned, and other wildlife. They're a critical part of the food chain and food webs all across the globe. When they go away, other things are going to go away. Bees as a group are a keystone species. That means when you lose them, you start to lose all of those other things I just mentioned. And they're also indicator species. If we're seeing less bees, that tells us something is going on in the environment. And I want to take a minute, literally about a minute, and show you a video of what the result of having no pollinators is in terms of trying to have food for your people. And in China, that's exactly what happened many years ago. They put so many toxins in the environment, they lost virtually all of their pollinators in the areas where they grow most of their food. So I just want to share this little video. It's just a clip to show you the alternative to having native pollinators. This may be a little herky-jerky. If it is, I apologize, it being a video. But this is what they do. They literally go out with it Q-tip like apparatus, and they have to go touch every flower in order to pollinate if they want to have food over there. So that's a world that if we continue to not be careful, I would hate to see this become our world in North America. So it's a devastating thing to actually see that this is what people have to do in that part of the world in order to have a good food supply. But fortunately, I went a little too fast there, we do still have a lot of good bees out there. In fact, there are over 4,000 species of bees, just bees, in North America. A few of them in Texas are of concern, as I mentioned earlier. These are just a few examples. You can see them doing their job. Here's over here on the left, you've got a I always call them shiny heinies. This is a carpenter bee. You can see pollen all over its back. You can see it on the forehead as it's in there spreading that pollen around. Here it is all over the back of their underside of their abdomen. Here goes probably a male bumblebee. I don't see it packing a lot of pollen, but look at all the pollen it's carrying on there. They typically are very hairy, so that helps them pick up those pollen grains as they're foraging. And then this little bee right here, it actually packs its pollen on the bottom of its abdomen. We think of bees putting them on their back leg. Here's an example of a bee, very common bee, that does it in a very different way. Really neat little bee. I want to show you this video. This is a little over a minute. And the reason I want to show it to you is I want you to watch what's happened. This wildflower is known as marble seed or false gromwell. It blooms in the spring. It's all over our woodlands around the hill country. Its flowers hang upside down. You can see that they're white. They have green tips. The other thing I want you to note is off to the left here, you'll see a little stem sticking out of that flower. That's actually the pistil, the female part of the flower. And the stamens are in the inside of the flower. They're actually attached on the inside of those individual petals, and the petals are closed like this. So this bee or any pollinator has to actually push their way through that opening to get to the nectar, which is at the base of the flower, which in this case is at the top of the flower because it's hanging upside down. And in doing so, they get pollen on them. But I want you to also watch the video very closely. Get close to your screen, okay? I want you to watch and see what else happens is this bee, which I believe is a Sonoran bumblebee, which is one of our species of greatest conservation need, does its thing. And I want you to just watch and let's see if you can observe what I'm hoping you'll see here. So see how it sticks its head all the way inside that flower. Pops open those petals. It's going to buzz over here. Chasing a bee with a GoPro is a challenge, let me tell you. Now again, very hairy insects. Think about why would the pistil be outside the flower, by the way. Notice how it's hanging upside down. Now, did you see it? Oh my gosh, there you go. Keep watching. If you missed it that time, keep watching. It goes to the next flower. Here's where you're really going to start to see the action. Do you see it? Do you see it? There it is. Do you see all that little powdery stuff falling out of the flower? That's the pollen. So those flowers that have their pistils outside the flower, the sticky end of it can pick up pollen floating through the air, and it's not being wind pollinated, it's being pollinated by this guy, can be pollinated that way, or the pollen then also is getting on the belly of that bumblebee, and then as it goes to that flower and pushes up against the pistil, it's pollinating other flowers. So what a great set of adaptations these flowers have to ensure pollination. And it's all because of that bumblebee. Awesome. I can't get over that. I just can't get over it. When I shot this video, I had no idea what I was doing for sure, what I was going to be seeing until I played it. And then I saw all that pollen waft through the wind. Really, really cool. Of course, wind is an important pollinating methodology as well, especially for grasses. So a lot of the grains that we eat require pollination, wind pollination. And when you start looking at the flowers of grasses, and yes, grasses have flowers, you can see these things right here. There are the pistils, the female part of the flower up in here. There are the stamens of the male flowers right there. They're going to release a lot of pollen because this is not real efficient. So a lot of pollen. That's why we get allergies sometimes in the spring and the summer and the fall. And then on this, now this flower right here, this plant right here is a grama grass, a native grass in Texas. And then this is our state grass. This is called side oats grama, the state grass of Texas. When you look at individual little, that's a little flower cluster right there. These are more of them here, as you see hanging on the stem. We get a little closer, you can actually see that's the pistil. Notice how hairy it is. It's so that it can capture those little pollen grains as they float by. And then of course, these are the stamens right there. So that wind pollination is a very effective tool, even though a little less efficient than you have with insect or bat or bird pollination from hummingbirds. And then just to show you a close-up of what a pollen, where the pollen is, this is a grass known as Eastern Gamma grass. The photo on the right, believe it or not, it looks like an old rope. It's actually the pistils of the female part of the flower of that particular grass. The photo on the left is an entire, oh my gosh, now I knew it. The anther of that particular flowering plant. And the close-up, you can actually see pollen grains in here. So this hangs down, the wind blows it around, those pollen grains fall out and float around, and then hopefully they'll land, some of them will land on this right here. So just to kind of show you what it really looks like, it kind of looks like some kind of weird creature, actually. And of course, going back to those pollinators, we've basically got 5 big groups of insects that are considered pollinators. Of course, bees are probably the lead. They're the most efficient pollinators, and they really are physically trying to move pollen around. Our native pollinators, research has shown, is they are more efficient pollinators of our plants, whether it's food crops or our other native plants than honeybees. But honeybees are so important now. Without them, we would be in trouble. But certainly, because of the efficiency of our native bees, we really need to protect those bees. Critical to our survival. And of course, then flies, which a lot of times look like bees, are also pollinators. I will tell you, flies only have 2 wings, there and there. And then down right here behind this little yellow spot is another thing. Those are their other wings, which have been modified into things called halteres. But that's a fly. And of course, butterflies, we think of butterflies, they're more incidental. I've seen, when I see butterflies, when I get close to them, where they have the pollen is actually on their proboscis. So as they're sticking that proboscis in there, they're getting some pollen and maybe spreading from flower to flower that way. And then here's a cactus flower just to show you 3 different species of beetles in that one flower right there. And they're bumping around, they're trying to get nectar, maybe getting some pollen, but they're kind of incidental, but very valuable pollinators. And then wasps, as Laurie said, a lot of people don't like wasps because they sting, they certainly hurt, but they are fascinating creatures, and they do a lot of pollinating as well, as they're feeding on nectar and pollen as well. And you can see on the head of this wasp, you can see some pollen grains stuck to its forehead right there. So these are really important. These are the critters that I like to say make the world go around. Without them, it would be a very diminished earth, to say the least. And just to kind of show you a few pictures of flowers, just to kind of show you the strategies. These are called composites. These are plants that have lots and lots of flowers on one head. So this one in the center, each one of these petals is actually an entire flower. On this picture, all of these petals, individual flowers. All of these things sticking up, individual flowers. Same thing over here with this particular wildflower. It's got a couple of hundred flowers just on that one head. And if you're trying to attract pollinators, these are great flowers to plant. A, they're native, and B, they attract a lot of attention. Just to show you a close-up of those flowers, this would be a ray flower from a sunflower-like family plant. This is a disc flower. These curlicue things here are the actual pistils, part of the pistil. Here's a close-up of that flower as the pistil is actually emerging. This dark part right here, those are actually the stamens. And I know I got to keep talking. I'm almost done. So inside that flower, that tiny little flower, the stamens wrap around where the pistil is going to come out, right? And so the pollen grains are on the inside of the stamens, and as the pistil pushes through, those pollen grains stick to the outside of the pistil, of the little pistil wings here. And so that's what pushes those pollen grains out, but they don't self-pollinate. What happens is they're closed like this, they push up through, pollen's here, gets exposed, and then their pistils open like this, so you end up like this over here, so that they get exposed to clean air so more pollen can fall on them. Fabulous way to get pollination. And then of course there's milkweeds. Milkweeds are just, they're their own deal. But this beetle right here has a pollen sac from a milkweed, and that pollen sac actually has to be transferred from one part of the flower into these little slits right here in order for you to have a milkweed pod. We could go on all night about those, but we don't have time. And then of course, a lot of flowers will communicate their wishes to pollinators. Sometimes they have unique colors in the center of their flower, as in here and here. Look at this, they've got lines. All these lines point to where the source of food is. And then in other plants, like the Texas bluebonnet, they actually communicate with the pollinators and tell them when their individual flowers, the center of their flowers turn purple, that means they've been pollinated. There's no sense in going there because they're not producing nectar anymore. The ones with the white are still good to be pollinated. So plants and animals are talking back and forth, even though they're not necessarily talking our language. And then of course, some flowers have their stamens real exposed, like the columbine here, or the scarlet musk thistle over here. So as pollinators go by, and here's ocotillo, great desert plant out in the Chihuahuan Desert. But those things are exposed so that as things come in, they're pushed around. The wind can also help pollinate them. And then again, a lot of flowers have designed so that they have these lines, radiating lines, that are basically road maps for the pollinator to go get the nectar. And in the process, if you look at this flower right here, if you look at this flower here, if you look at this flower here, when they land on these little landing pads, if you will, then what happens is their weight actually forces those stamens down onto their back, and they tap down on some pollen and then move to the next flower, do it again, and there you go. You got pollination. Clever, clever, I'm telling you. And then finally, there are even flowers like this. These are flowers whose stamens require a special kind of pollinator, and that pollinator is the bumblebee. Okay, and I want to show you very quickly this little short clip, and I want you to listen. So turn your volume up on your computer, okay? I want you to hear it. You know how a bee sounds when it flies around, a loud buzzing noise. Listen for the second buzzing noise in this video clip. And away it goes. That's all there is. Great. So they get there and they have to vibrate their body in order to release the pollen from these plants. These are members of the Solanaceae family, which includes our tomatoes. So bumblebees are really critical for tomato pollination. So that is a fascinating, another example of how the natural world works so great. I mean, it's just amazing. Let's see if I can get out of this now. I'm always messing around here. There we go. All right, so now I'm turning it over to Minna. Hopefully I didn't talk too long. And then later, we have a game show. So there you go. I will stop sharing now, Minna. Turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Craig. You got me so excited. I'm ready right now. I think I'm going to start with moths tonight.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
At midnight at 12
o'clock. I'm out there looking for pollinators, let me tell you.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Let me pull up my PowerPoint. There we go. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Sure can.
You can. All right. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Minna Paul. I'm the Education and Volunteer Coordinator with the San Antonio River Authority. And Laurie asked me to share some of the great places that you can actually observe pollinators in and around San Antonio. So Laurie, are you frozen or can you still hear me?
I can hear you, Minna.
Fantastic. Okay. I saw Laurie frozen and I thought, okay, nobody can hear me or see me at this time. All right. So I'd like to start off first to give you like a background and just, and I'll tell you where I come from before I get into. So I have a background of living in a different side of the world from here. I grew up in India, the first half of my life. My dad protected wildlife sanctuaries in central India. And so this is what I saw growing up. And I thought that this was very normal to see one of these amazing creatures drinking water in a river. And so my, idea of the world was very, very warped, I have to say, because I thought that was what everybody saw. But what this did for me is it opened my eyes to the fact that in nature, you have to observe the slightest things. You have to use all your 5 senses to actually see, hear, smell, feel. Feel from your heart sometimes. It's strange that I'm saying it, but you have to really, that's how you really get inspired to see and observe nature and contribute to its protection as well. So what I do with the River Authority is to inspire people to really pay attention to the smallest things in nature. And so I'm going to have a little question for you here. Does anybody see a clue on this tree that indicates that a Bengal tiger visited this area? And I'm going to show you, if you see these 2 claw marks, it's actually a tiger. It's a territorial thing where he's actually indicating to every other tiger that this is my space. And now, if you are not aware of these things, these are clues that you spot in nature. And if you don't have the eyes to see, the smell, the nose to smell, you're really going to miss some amazing things that happen in nature and some of the adaptations and some of the life of these amazing creatures. So as you go out and do this from 2nd to the 18th, I want you to really open out your 5 senses and enjoy and really look at those tiniest of things that you could, something that you probably never thought, that is there, is you're going to see it if you look with those eyes. So having said that, I'm going to show you where you can actually go to see these amazing pollinators. So of course, you're going to start with your garden. You're going to go out there and you're going to open your eyes and really look for these amazing buzzing creatures that are out there. Once you've done that, what we have in San Antonio, we have a treasure in San Antonio. And I am so proud to live now here in San Antonio. It's almost, I think I've been in the US now for 20 years, and in about 11 of those, I've been here in San Antonio, and I'm so proud of this city. Imagine that you could go to our river that starts here in San Antonio and see a site like this, where it's completely, covered with flowers for our pollinators. So I'm inviting you to go to the San Antonio River, especially to the south side of the San Antonio River, beyond the urban section, and really hike there and look for those amazing creatures that you're going to find out there busy doing their pollinating function in the universe. What I'm going to show you here is I want you to think about our land slightly differently. So when you look at our watershed, the San Antonio River and all its little creeks, we have 8,800 square miles of stream beds here in our watershed. And so all these little creeks, the Leon, Leon, Salado, Cibolo, the rivers, the Medina and the San Antonio River, all of them have riparian habitats that are managed, maintained by the River Authority. And we are doing a lot to actually keep those spaces native so that we can really increase the biodiversity in these spaces. So I want you to go, even if you have a creek very close to where you are, I want you to go to those spaces to just see what you find there. I was surprised during the last Bio-Blitz that we did when I went out to the Leon Creek, very close to my house. I found 20 different species of dragonflies right there, which I was shocked. I've never seen that many in one little space. And the water there was just, a little puddle there, but we had all these species. So the diversity that you'll find in those riparian habitats is pretty amazing. And especially with some of the work that we are doing, I think you're going to really find some amazing pollinators there. So I want you to actually go to our website and try and look for the trails, our parks and trails. We do have paddling trails, but I want you to look for our parks and trails that are all along the river. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the parks that you can actually go to do some of your Bio-Blitz efforts. I'm going to start with the urban section of the river, which is downtown, which is the museum reach. Now, the River Authority actually has maintained that portion, and you're going to find, even though there are some non-native species that you're going to find there, which just because it's an urban area and we want it to look beautiful, but most of it is native. And so if you walk along that area, you're going to actually find a lot of pollinators in those areas. I would want to actually, more than the museum reach, I would want you to go to San Pedro Creek. I don't know how many of you have actually gone to the San Pedro Creek Culture Park. It is right now, I'm going to show you a video of, I went there a couple of weeks ago, and you have to see this. So this is, just right next to the water. You have all these plants that are right, literally almost falling into the water, and it's buzzing with bees and hummingbirds and all kinds of cool creatures. So all you need to do is go to a water's edge, and that habitat is actually going to give you some really amazing observations. This one actually, of course, we have the ducks there, but look at this. Here, there's a hummingbird, very territorial, fighting with the bees there for the Turk's cap. I could literally sit there and watch these guys, and there's two hummingbirds actually fighting for it as well. So this is some of the drama that you're going to see when you go looking for pollinators off of your water's edge at San Pedro Creek. The Mission Reach, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this because this is our pride and joy. San Antonio was actually recognized internationally in 2018 because we won the International River Prize. It's called the Thais International River Prize for this Mission Reach. So this was an area that was completely degraded when we channelized the river for flood control. And today it's been eco-restored to the point that I'm going to show you some pictures. It was recognized internationally when they actually designated our missions as a World Heritage Site. So, and I'm going to show off a little bit over here, because if you kind of see this stretch, it's about 16 miles of hike and bike trails. Okay, so it is a restored ecosystem. 570 acres. And then, so when you look at the actual map, this is the Museum Reach portion, which is the downtown area. And then you have Eagle Land here. And then from here all the way down to Mission Espada is the area that you want to go to, because that is a completely native habitat that we are maintaining. And so I want you to look at this kind of animation that I have here. So this ecosystem restoration project, what would have taken nature about 200 years to reach, in the successional, right, to reach its peak, placing, look at what we've done so this is what you're going to see in 50 years. So right now, we are at, almost like at the, first 1/3 portion of that. And what we hope is for this area to reach its, complete, like successional completion in 50 years. So you have not only you, but your future generations are going to have an area completely native right next to the river to go to look for pollinators. So I really want you to take your family and go and enjoy this space. Remember though that there are timings for these spaces. It's dawn to 11 p.m. from South Alamo Street to Lone Star Boulevard, where the flood control outlet is. But then the rest of it to the end is from dawn to dusk. So keep that in mind when you go exploring over there. If you haven't seen Confluence Park, you're missing something. It is an educational and sustainability park. And there is the whole area is showcasing what you can do on your land to make it completely sustainable. Not only can see what different ecosystems look like here in Texas, but you can actually see ways to conserve water and to see features that you can add into your own system, in your own yards, like rain gardens and other things that will actually do that for your own space. So I definitely want you to go there, and I'd like to share I want to share a video of the Dance of the Pollinators there at Confluence Park on the Mealy Blue Sage. So this is literally, if you go there spring and fall, the whole area is buzzing with pollinators. So I definitely want you guys to go out to Confluence and use that as a space to do your Bio-Blitz. We, as part of the Monarch Butterfly Pollinator Festival coming up, we are going to be doing a teacher workshop. So if you have teachers that are, that are getting into this, building areas in their schools, then please have them look out for a teacher workshop that we are offering. I do also want you to know that some of these parks you can reserve and bring larger groups. Confluence Park, of course, but Acequia Park, this is my favorite park actually, because it has a working acequia, a trail that you can go, and it's amazing to see it. It just blows my mind when I see that trail, and you find native milkweed and all kinds of things right there, and right on next to the edge. This pavilion is on one side, on the other side is the river's edge. There is a fishing pier, so you can go fishing and you can look, and it's completely, it's got a complete native habitat there. Further south, we also have some parks, which is the Helton Nature Park. There's camping in this park. It's mostly a pecan grove. We do have the brand new Escondido Creek Parkway in Kennedy, if you go further south. And then you have the Branch Nature Park in Goliad. So these are all parks maintained by the River Authority, and we try our absolute best to keep it completely native. So the diversity of pollinators you're going to see in this space is extremely, extremely high. So that's definitely where I want you to go. That being said, Laurie did want me to talk a little bit into the aspect of why should we care when we're actually going to look for pollinators. I know Craig and Laurie talked about just the significance and the enormity of the need for us to really bring these pollinators into our yards, right? So I want to kind of talk about a little bit into what is a native, what is a non-native, and what is an invasive, right? And the more we look at pollinators, we'll actually kind of notice what can you bring into your spaces that will increase the number of pollinators in your spaces. The thing about native plants is that it actually belongs in this space. They grow naturally here, right? So they provide habitat, food for wildlife, and they cause absolutely no harmful effects to the environment, right? They are well adapted to the soil, to the climate, to other wildlife, and to a host of other factors. And not only that, they actually support native wildlife at all its stages, like from the larval stages to all of its life cycle. And you are basically attracting pollinators into your yard if you have these native plants. And let me tell you, if you convert your entire yard into a native habitat, that space becomes a vibrant, dynamic space that you cannot believe what it's going to attract. So I know Laurie has done it, and I'm sure Craig too. If you try doing it to your yard, and it's going to blow your mind away with just what it brings into your yard. Now, when you look at the other side, when you look at a non-native plant, so that means a non-native is something that occurs outside of their native range, right? So it could be another country, but it could be just outside your region, right? And so it's being brought in from that region to your space, either by accident or by a person. But unlike invasive species, which I'll come to later, these non-native species may not be actually bad in the sense that they may not hinder or prevent the survival of other species in the ecosystem. They're just, existing here. And some of these species, like the petunias and tomatoes, basically, they present no threat at all to native plants and have been cultivated for centuries all over the world, right? So we have these non-natives that have lived in spaces forever without any issues. But and I'll give you a couple of examples here just so you can see. Look at this. Now, this one, I particularly like this because India, where I'm from, this passion vine, we call it Nilkamal. It's actually got, religious significance. This one, the Passiflora caerulea, is actually from South America, right? But we have these native ones, which is the incarnata, which is the larval host plant for Gulf fritillés and zebra longwings and Julias. So basically, you're now, when you bring in the native species, you might have similar plants, but this one is actually going to bring a far more habitat benefits, like ecosystem benefits, when you add these. So that's something for you to consider when you're actually looking for a species to bring into your home. Grasses. If you look at our Bermuda grass versus a curly mesquite, look, I'm sorry, let me go back. I moved this thing around, hang on. So basically this grass has root systems that are actually way deep into the soil. It prevents erosion, right? Now it has this shoot that actually create that much of biomass outside of the soil, right? And you're actually now bringing in something that is meant to be in this space, creating all kinds of ecosystem benefits. So definitely that is something that you want to aim for when you're looking at what do you want to plant in your yard. One of the other things I want to kind of talk about here is, even though non-natives and invasive plants also provide shelter, nesting opportunities, and some food options for wildlife, native plants support a greater diversity and number of wildlife. That is something that I want you to take away with that. So we definitely want that in our spaces, to bring in more pollinators and to provide that habitat for them. Invasive species, as you all know, is defined by the National Park Service as it will be a non-native organism whose introduction actually causes economic, environmental harm. So it's not just there, it actually is creating harm. So it is taking, so when you introduce these into our habitat, it's actually taking over and causing problems to our native species. So these are the ones that you absolutely do not want in our space. And so that this is the distinctions I kind of wanted to bring out to you. Today, I'm actually talking only about native, non-native, invasive, where plants are concerned, but I do want to, okay, so I want to show this picture. Look at this. This is just one picture. And now in this one little frame, there are invasives right there, right? So if you can start noticing this, you'll start seeing that there's a lot of invasives in our space, that have come and they're taking over our land. So it's an amazing thing for you to be educated to understand which are these species that are causing harm to our lands. This one I'm kind of actually going to jump in, like Craig did with the skunk. This is our current problem with the River Authority. I don't know if you've heard about it. We have invasive apple snails in our river at this time. It was first seen in October of 2019, and they are starting to really reproduce and take over in our river. So if you kind of look at them, these are highly aggressive. They voraciously eat aquatic plants and really take away some of that habitat requirements of our native species. So right now we are actually involving some volunteers. We actually have Eddie with us today. He's a river warrior with us. We are going to be doing a training on October 30th to actually teach volunteers how to really take off these egg cases. You can't take out these snails, actual snails, because you need permits for that, but you can scrape off the egg cases and actually crush them and to really, protect our space. So if that's something that you're interested in, please join our warrior program. And you know what? We do some amazing invasive removals of whether it's plants or aquatic species and all of that. So please join us. If you see our folks out on the Mission Reach, they're actually planting native milkweed right there. So if you're out in the Mission Reach, you're going to see some of our folks in the blue shirts doing their absolutely fabulous job. This was how that area used to look. Okay, it was completely dominated by non-native species. And today, this is how it looks. So I'm super excited to invite you guys to come look at this space. And so if you have milkweed, we have all kinds of cool stuff that pollinators are looking for. And definitely look at the benefits of planting native plants in your garden so you can bring them to your yard. Because they're better suited for our climate. They have, because of erosion control, they provide shelter and also bring in biodiversity for future generations. So here is, I can share this PowerPoint with you if you guys want. These are some of the species we've planted for a larval host plant pollinator garden at Confluence Park. And if you see each of these species, the fragrant mistflower, the flame acanthus, the Texas milkweed, each of them attract butterflies, bees, moths, hummingbirds, and then our larval host plants for some of the other plants as well. So different stages of these pollinators as well, right? So definitely, if you would like more information on all of this, I have some butterfly pictures here. I really, would love for you to look at some of these resources to kind of figure out just for yourself, what are our native plants and which are our invasive plants. It really kind of, as you start looking for pollinators, you'll also start seeing, oh no, we have an invasive here, right? So go to these, these sites and to increase your knowledge on some of these invasives that live in our lands. And then I want to stop there. I hope I haven't gone beyond my 20 minutes, Laurie. I know you were worried. Did I do it? All right.
You did good.
Oh, fantastic. I'm known to go about my time. I'm a storyteller, can totally go off, but I want you to enjoy the amazing world of beneficial pollinators as you do this Texas Pollinator Bio-Blitz. And if you require any kind of guidance, any help, anything that I can do while you're going through from the 2nd to the 18th, please reach out to us. We have experts at the River Authority that can actually answer all your questions and really help you with some of what you're doing. So enjoy, and I'm going to pass it back to Laurie.
Awesome. Thank you, Minna. That's awesome. This is going to be a super exciting thing. So we're going to go back to me real quick. So what I wanted to talk about was looking for pollinators, and Minna and Craig talked a little bit about this, but what I wanted to do was take a real quick, deep look real quick about what we can and where and how to find pollinators. First off is looking at home. And like Minna said, I am definitely a gardener. And that's one of those things I do at work and at home is run gardens. It's a fabulous hobby, and in my yard alone, I have over, I think when I last counted, 110 different species. So it is super exciting for my little half acre. So your whole life can be changed by a few little gardens. So it's pretty exciting. One thing that, I really recommend, people do when, you're gardening and when you're looking at ways to support pollinators so that you can participate in amazing bio-blitzes and get more diverse pollinators attracted to your world, is planting those native nectar and host plants, but also leaving a lot of real tall, crazy looking habitat for those animals. So one thing that, I have a whole presentation on and talk to people about is leaving your gardens wild and woolly. Don't pick up your leaves, because most of your bumblebees, your luna moths, a lot of your, even though luna moths aren't a pollinator, but a lot of other moths too require those leaves to pupate or to, overwinter. So if we don't have those places for them to live, they can't do that. And one of the things that, is really great for pollinators, one plant is great, but having it to where, a bed is 3 to 4 feet deep is actually habitat for those animals. So looking at ways that you can increase that. One of the pictures that I have up here is a picture with 3 butterflies. They're kind of hard to see, but it's the top right. is this is a prairie coneflower, and it is not necessarily one of the best pollinating flowers out there for pollinators. It doesn't attract a wide variety, but it does produce a chemical that kills other plants around it that kind of stinky. And a lot of pollinators, like these Gulf literales, use it as a roosting spot. So even though not every plant is attractive and amazing as a pollinator, some of those scraggly ones, like, in the middle of my flower bed here, you've got these, really super tall frostweeds that are just, kind of ragged looking. Those provide great places for pollinators to hide. And then also making sure that you've got trees and things above it. I know that's not a native, that's a loquat, but I eat loquats. And they're a great pollinating plant. It also provides some cover. So when you're looking at things for food and flowers, that there are good places that, you can do that too. And I love frostweed. This is the top left picture is, one of my horrible photography, let me tell you, but it is, we've got 5 different, or at least 3 species of butterfly here. You've got, your little Texas crescents, your black swallowtails, and, your queens. And, I see butterflies all year long. And right now during October, especially during this Bio-Blitz, we're encountering a beautiful migrant or kind of exodus, whether you will, snout butterflies. So there's tons of snouts up here. And one thing too, like, Minna and Craig have said, is looking at flowers. This particular challenge also includes flowers. So taking pictures of flowers is important. What's flowering at this time is super important to pollinators. So getting those up close, if you're not fast enough to get the pollinator, still post that flower if you don't know what it is, or, even if you just want to contribute to the citizen science of it. Flowers that have, obviously, like Craig talked about, multiple places for nectar, or in multiple flowers, and multiple of those congregate flowers are really exciting, for pollinators. And even things like grasses, like this is a cup grass. It's not necessarily a pollinator plant, it's a wind pollinated plant, but you will see a lot of pollinators resting on it and in it. So it's a pretty fun plant to see, you're going through there too. So we even have on this bottom left, this is a big, huge overfly. So they're really great, getting up and close and taking a look at different places and things that you can plant in your yard. And one thing about the challenge too is that all life cycles count. So eggs, larvae, pupa, all, adults, all of it. Every species or every part of that life cycle for those invertebrates, is super important for those pollinators. And obviously, if you guys are doing gardening at home, planting those host plants is really panically important. Obviously, picking the native varieties is key, especially since you're looking at native pollinators. And if you have non-native things, like, for example, some garden plants, like this below on the bottom left is a rue with black swallowtail larvae on it. That's okay. Just be tolerant of them. They're pretty exciting. Take pictures, enjoy them while you got them. Looking through leaf litter, is important too. Like, the bottom and the middle bottom picture with that really weird looking little bug is a baby firefly. So the fireflies we find all over the Cibolo Nature Center and places where there's water and non-mowed grass and non-pesticides. You have a chance to find fireflies and their larvae. And they're a larva sometimes up in certain species up to 2 years. So they're a larva a long time, often longer. They're often longer a larva than they are an adult beetle. So that's pretty cool when you look at these guys. And even looking at, being really careful in looking at flowers. So, first off, I took a really good picture of one of my native zyzote milkweeds, and then looked at it and noticed that there's 2 monarch caterpillars on it. And I was really excited, as you get closer, being able to look at those, and looking at Veritas, there's one over there. And then looking underneath plants too, and looking for those pupa are kind of important. Also, we talked about, how you're going to capture moths, looking at lights at night. October's a good, challenge to do the dark skies thing, but to do your dark skies and turn out your lights at night. But also, if you have windows, check your windows at night. I found this beautiful, underwing moth outside my windows. And then, lots of, beautiful hawk moths inside of those moonflowers that are out there. And the bottom, this one is a moth that kind of looks like a hummingbird. It's not a hummingbird moth. This one is a white line sphinx moth, but this same moth, you can see it on the, hanging out near lights, or hanging out in your garden around dusk. So check around twilight too. So pollinators, there's a huge diversity of pollinators at all times of the day, especially during the hottest parts of the day. But check in the evening if you're not able to, and you can get some really fun guys out there. And one thing I want you guys to do is when you take a picture, take a look and look a little bit closer at that picture. We talk a lot about bees and honeybees, and that though they are incredibly important species to our food production, they're also really good at outcompeting other species, especially our natives. And so one thing that you guys can see here is you can see these four bees, four big honeybees there. And this cute off to the upper left of this big, beautiful white poppy, this beautiful white prickly poppy, we see this little bitty sweet bee. And this is a native Texas bee. So it's just waiting its turn. It cannot compete with those other big girls. So, they have to just kind of wait their turn. So one thing that you can do that's really important with gardening or restoring habitat or restoring lands is making sure that you put enough food out there to where, you can support honeybees that are going to be here, whether they are cultivated or feral, or and our native animals too. So those are there too. Now on the right picture, this whole weedy mess is a grapevine. And if you guys look like kind of to the upper left, you'll see a weird what looks like to be a leaf. This is a black swallowtail pupa that's doing a J hook. So it's just holding on in a J position so it can pretend to be a leaf. So even the pupa have, motion, and a lot of different pupa move around and pretend to be leaves in the wind. So this is a pretty cool thing to look at too. So really excited about those. And just as Minna invited you guys to go out to the San Antonio River, I would like to invite you guys to come out to the Cibolo Nature Center. It is a gorgeous place. If you haven't been to the Nature Center side, it's over 160 acres of public park where, with restored ecosystems and those beautiful places that have grown up with gorgeous tree cover, and places for you to visit. Near the creek, we have wildflowers out there, on your way, but, there's some beautiful places where you can see the fireflies at night. So those are pretty exciting, whether it be swallowtails and beetles on your way there, or, taking a look at these cute little fireflies when you're there too is pretty awesome. The Cibolo Nature Center trails are, open every single day. There are days where we close the parking lot during holidays, but you're still accessible by walking path. We are free to the public. The only thing that we, charge for are, some of our educational programmings or events that we do there. We are closed 2 times out of the year, and this year we're closed from the 8th to the 12th for the tail end of Wildlife Research Week. But that's okay. We've got another location for you to visit. And we are, on City Park Road. So 140 City Park Road, or 140 City Park Road. So you guys can find us there. And this is an absolutely gorgeous pipevine swallowtail baby, and they're crawling all over the place. So if you want to take a look at some really fun invertebrates and some really fun pollinators at all stages, now is a good time to come. We are flooded with snouts, absolutely flooded. It is beautiful. Also come visit us at our Herf Farm and Gardens. A lot of our plants on the garden side, we have a native gardens. We just put in our new pollinator garden and are building that into some really cool, quirky natives that are kind of unknown. We also have some amazing cultivars and food plants for you guys to come see. So at the bottom is one of my favorite. That's one of those lovely snoring bumblebees, that we have, and they are absolutely everywhere. And it is inside of a loofah flower. So we have, loofahs right now. We've got pumpkins, we've got melons, and there are bumblebees all over the place, and tons of stands of Maley blue sages, zinnias, you name it, we've got it. I love this beautiful little purple hair streak up in the top corner, or the great purple hair streak, which is up in the top right, pollinating a carrot flower. So there's a lot of really cool, cool things going on up there too. We're also doing research on queen and monarch butterflies over there for OE testing, which is a parasitic protozoan. So, you know, that's part of our, you know, monarch joint venture that we work with, and also the Alamo Area Monarch Collaborative is one of the things that we work with over there. So some really cool bugs that you guys can see at the Her Farm. We also have public trails on the farm side. So beautiful wildflower trails, a huge multi-acre monarch meadow that's a restored wildflower area with tons, hundreds and hundreds of native milkweeds. So it's pretty special and really exciting. And right now, here's a picture I took the other day of the snouts. They are just everywhere. And this is a frostweed, kind of a close-up, and it is just wreathed in snouts right now. So it's really pretty amazing. And going from there. So the Her Farm trails are open every Saturday from 9 to 1 during our farmers market. And it's free. You don't have to pay to go in or anything. So if you need a social distancing hike or just some time to get those pollinators in, this is not a native flower, by the way. This is one of those horrible musk thistles, but I had to use it in my presentation because I got three different pollinators in one picture. So that was pretty exciting. But you know, there's some beautiful flowers out there for you guys to see, lovely natives. You know, come visit the gardens, come visit the nature center, you know, and come visit us out there, you know, and join us for those things. So, and I am going to now turn it back to Craig. And so we're ready to go.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's awesome. Both those presentations were awesome. I'm not a city person, so San Antonio scares me, but I have to say, Minna, you've got some pretty neat areas there. So
She's got some nice places.
maybe I'll have to venture forth. All right, let's see here. We're going to go ahead now. So you've hopefully learned a few things today, this evening, I should say. And if it looks like it's getting dark in my room, my office, it is. I have one light on, so since the sun's setting so early and the overhead light makes so much noise, I didn't want to turn it on. So I wish it was moving around, it would look almost like a campfire. So, but no, I am not building a campfire here. So now what I want to do is play a fun little game. We're going to just have a quick quiz, and this is going to be what I would encourage people to do is, this is not a hard quiz, by the way. But if you want to go ahead, can they unmute themselves or not unmute themselves? Or you're muted, I guess, Laurie.
I said I asked everybody to unmute themselves. So if you guys would like to unmute yourselves and participate, you're totally welcome. If not, I think me and Craig and Minna will be playing a game together, and it'll be super fun.
That's right. So here, I'm going to show you two pictures on each slide, a left and a right, and should be pretty obvious. But what I want you to do when if you're going to unmute is just answer pollinator left, pollinator right, or non-pollinator left, non-pollinator right. How's that sound? Okay. So are we ready?
Yes.
Appears that we're ready. Okay.
We're ready.
All right, so here we go. Again, this is not complicated. So, I was just trying to have some fun. All right, so what do we have? You don't have to tell me what species we have. You can if you want, but the bird, the thing on the left, pollinator or not pollinator?
Yes, pollinator.
Bird on the right.
A Phoebe, yes, a pollinator.
It is. I would say it is not a pollinator.
Not a pollinator. We can't really hear you that well, Craig.
Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Let me turn it up.
I would definitely say that Phoebe is not a pollinator.
Not a pollinator.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Not a pollinator. However, it eats pollinators. So if you really wanted to get down to it, it kind of is part pollinator, simply because part of its muscles and bones and everything else are made up of pollinators. So
Yeah.
technically not much of a pollinator.
That's
All right.
what I meant, yeah.
Yeah, I knew you did. So on the left, the thing on the left, is that a pollinator?
No, it's a robber fly.
That is correct. That is a robber fly. They are actually mimics of bumblebees, but they are predatory flies, and I mean big time predatory flies. This was actually taken out at Cibolo Nature Center. But you can see it's got very short antenna, which makes it a fly. It's only, if you could really see it, it's only got 2 wings. But you can see that yellow stripe back there to kind of imitate the bumblebee. They can actually take down bumblebees and other large insects. They've got their legs are designed very much like dragonflies, also predators. All right, what about the critter on the right?
Yes.
Definitely. You can see all the pollen all over its rear end, its abdomen, on its legs. It's just covered with pollen. You can even see pollen grains all the way through this native Texas thistle plant that's right there. So that's correct. Okay, here we go. Critter on the left. Ever seen it pollinating a flower? I think not.
I haven't seen a hognose snake pollinate a flower yet. But
It would be extraordinarily accidental.
yes.
And what about the critter on the right here?
It's a beetle, yeah.
Yes.
It is a beetle that spends a lot of time in flowers, so probably an incidental sort of pollinator, and I see it in flowers a lot, so that is correct. All right. What do we have here on the left? Have we got a pollinator or not a pollinator?
No.
Not a pollinator.
Dragonfly, no, but will they eat pollinators?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
All the time. All the time. That's a green darner, by the way. And then what about the bird on the right?
It's a yellow crowned night heron.
Actually, no.
So
You
reddish
know what-
Black crowned.
No, no.
Oh, it's a green heron.
There you go.
Little
Green
green
heron. And of course, they're fish eaters and crayfish eaters, so they're not much for pollinating. All right. I told you this wasn't that hard. So. All right. Picture on the left. What do we have? What's going on there? Yes or no? Look carefully at that picture.
Man, look at its little legs with all those little pollen
Yes.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a very tiny fly. That is a close-up of a fly on frostweed. But you can see it's got a long proboscis that it's drinking nectar, and it's incidentally moving around a lot of pollen. So, and then what about the wasp on the right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, definitely a pollinator too. So it's moving some things around, although it's drinking a lot of nectar out of the snow on the mountains. All right. How about the critter on the left? And by the way, which one of these, we're gonna step it up a little bit. Which one's a fly and which one's a bee?
The one on the right is a fly. Well, I think my right and your right are different.
Nope, nope, same thing.
So the one on the lower right is a fly.
Yes.
And
How
the
did
one on
you-
the top left is a bee.
So how did you know? What told you? What was the difference? What were the couple of differences there?
The
Those two,
eyes.
The eyes are very different, true.
those 2 wings
2 wings on the fly.
and the little short stubbly fly antenna.
There you go. That's exactly right. And of course, both of them are in fact pollinators.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. Here we go. What about the thing on? What about all the things in the picture on the left there?
Yeah, pick anything and I think you got it right.
Yeah, I think you got a pollinator.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're 3 for 3 there. And what about the critter on the right?
No, he
No.
probably is full of pollinators
He's
though.
probably full of pollinators. Exactly. And oh, by the way, if you really look at that picture on the left, there's a tiny little moth or some kind of critter just to the right of the wasp.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Wow.
I just noticed that. So yes and no. Okay. And then what about here? The
Oh yeah.
two-tailed swallowtail pollinator.
Yes.
And then what do we got over here on the right?
A
How many
ton of
Ton of
pollinators.
pollinators, yes. Yes, yes, and yes. That's exactly right. We've got a bee and 2 different kinds of beetles, actually. Pretty amazing. And now I just want to show you a couple last videos of critters out there doing their thing. And this one I want to ask you, in this instance, when I play the video, is it pollinating or not? So let's play the video. First of all, it's a giant swallowtail. It's a western giant swallowtail. Or maybe it's, yeah, it's a giant swallowtail. They split them into east and west. So what, does anybody recognize that flower that's blooming right there? Anybody recognize that plant?
Whoa.
Let me show it again. Let me show it again. Watch that plant real carefully. It's a little hard to see, but that is a milkweed.
It's fine.
Yep, it's called twine vine is what I call it. It goes by different names. Grows all over the place right now. But remember when I said that pollinators that go to milkweeds have to bring a sack of pollen out? And yeah, this guy's not going to do that on this plant. So in this case, I wouldn't call that, on that flower, I wouldn't call this guy a pollinator. But if it goes to frostweed or something else with a different kind of more traditional flower, it very well could be. So that's one of those trick questions that your teachers always used to ask you in school, and you get mad about it. All right, so then the last one, let's see if I get to the next picture here. Come on, give me to the next one. There we go. And then finally, as Laurie showed you a photograph of some of the wonderful snouts going by, I've got a slow motion video I just want you to enjoy. This plant, by the way, which is kind of the bane of the existence of wildlife managers often, is known as poverty weed. But look how effective it is when it's blooming to attract all of those pollinators. So that's just a short clip, too short a clip. I cut that one too short. But they're out there literally by the millions right now as they're migrating. And their story is pretty interesting. They are around here year round for the most part, but in small numbers. But what happens, I guess I should talk to the actual camera and not over here to the screen where your pictures are. What happens is out in the desert, out in the Chihuahuan Desert in West Texas, after a drought, when all of the trees have lost their leaves, and then they get rain like they did a few weeks ago, good rains out in parts of it, they put on a new flush. And one of the host plants for this butterfly is the desert hackberry. And what the desert hackberry does, puts on that flush of leaves, these guys go crazy. The caterpillars eat up all the leaves. There's mass mating going on. And then there's this mass migration. And the thoughts are that it's mostly males. The research shows that it's mostly males. And they're heading kind of east-southeast. And the thought is that maybe one of the theories is why do they do this, is that they have eaten off all the food supplies, so they're coming east to find more food in order to mate with the females that may be around and then have another generation. But as we witnessed when we actually did go into San Antonio last Saturday just to have a meal that we really were desperate for. And then they changed the menu on us, but that's okay. But what happens, we were watching as we were sitting outside having our meal, and these snouts were literally running into the buildings, literally bouncing off the buildings, the awnings, the windows. They would bounce off of them and then work their way up and over the building. So they were so intent on migration that nothing was going to get in their way. It was pretty amazing to watch. So this is something that only happens really this kind of way about every 3 to 5 years. And it's always enjoyable, except for when you get out and after you've driven through the area and you find 100 of them on your car. So, but a few years ago, the last big one we had, people thought they were killing millions of monarchs. Fortunately, these are much smaller than monarchs, and we weren't actually doing that. So anyway, that's really all I have. So from my standpoint, I want to say thank you. I love that picture. I just took that the other day.
So cute, those snouts.
You can actually see its proboscis rolled up in there between its little snout there.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Anyway, that's all I have. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Craig and Minna. We don't have any questions in the chat, but is there any questions that you guys are hanging on there? So Susan or Hannah that you guys wanted to ask or anything? And if there are no questions, Craig, the one that I had was, just to reiterate, this is pollinators, cultivated plants, and flowers. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
Awesome.
anything that's blooming, and then the pollinators. And in fact, you don't even have to figure out if it's a pollinator or not, because our state entomologist went through and listed in the project what groups of species count. So if you take a picture of a spider or millipede, which of course aren't insects, but if you take things that look like they might be insects, arthropods, those won't go into the project. So you can still take pictures of them, but the only thing they're looking for are those pollinators. So, and
Awesome.
especially for us, the American and the Sonoran bumblebees, which we have both of around here. But those are two whose populations are declining a lot. So we're really interested in getting out there and hopefully people photographing and documenting where they are. We can learn a lot through this particular 2.5-2 week period or so.
Awesome.
So I have a question. If we take a picture of a flower and it has more than one kind of pollinator on it, do you just load it into iNaturalist once, or do you do it multiple times so that you get that species, each species identified?
So you have a choice. If you want to maximize your iNaturalist sighting,
Because we're also competitive.
Yes, that's right. You would isolate one pollinator, and then take a picture, and then upload that, and then isolate the other one. Then you could even isolate the flower that they're on, so you could get 3 observations out of that potentially if you had 2 pollinators. Because remember, the artificial intelligence is going to pick up the most prominent thing in the picture. So that's why if it's got a confusing several, it's kind of like with birds. If you take a picture of a flock of birds, it's going to go, well, which one do you want me to pick? So it's going to pick one, and maybe that's not the one you're trying to highlight. So yeah, you can just do a little photo editing and then maximize your effort and make more observations. So it starts in like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And tomorrow, tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, there's going to be a butterfly survey going on here for the, what do they call that? Field
research week.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to, and then at 10 o'clock, TNT is going to be out here. We're going to go live on our Facebook page, our Texas Nature Trackers Facebook page, to promote the Pollinator Bio-Blitz and to look for pollinators and kind of show you what we might be seeing there. So I'll be out there hosting that, and then the camera person will be the lady named Terry over there.
Cutting his head off.
No, she makes it work. I'm telling you, it's a lot easier. So that'll be on starting at 10 o'clock. We usually go about 45 minutes or so. So if you want to join us for that, look for the TNT Texas Nature Trackers Facebook page. And then really just get out and enjoy nature. The next 10 days, I saw the forecast. It's going to be beautiful weather. I wish there was some rain in there because it's getting dry again. But the pollinators, the flowers are blooming like crazy now. I think we'll start seeing more and more monarchs over the course of the next 2 weeks. So they're going to be migrating through. But get out there and enjoy nature and enjoy pollinators and just go enjoy the birds, all those birds down along those places. Minna, those are some beautiful looking places down there in San Antonio.
Yes.
I don't know if you heard me saying earlier that I try not to go to San Antonio, but I may have to eventually.
No, you have to, right? Look what I've done, right?
So if I go to the south end of San Antonio, I'll just loop all the way out like towards Del Rio and come back in that way. How's that? Not have to take I-10 into the city. So take the scenic tour. But, anyway, that's all. I know, Laura, you probably want to wrap things up, but thank you all for attending, and thanks to the 2 of you for wonderful presentations. I really enjoyed the evening.
This was a great one, guys, and we're going to record this, so whoever's on here, we'll send you guys the recording too. So thank y'all so much, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm going to be throwing my email in the chat here. Feel free to email me, if you've got any questions or follow-ups, or any future presentations that you guys would like. So we're looking at trying to flesh out our digital ed and looking at ways we can help engage people and get them outside and into nature, especially during this crazy, sad COVID times where we're locked indoors. So you need to get some fresh air. It's good for you. So this will be good.
My quick question for Craig. Can we share everything that you're doing on your social media? How would you like us? I do want all of us here to kind of really share with our friends and family and get people inspired. So how can we do that? If you want to just give us a quick, how do we get more people involved in this effort?
In terms of iNaturalist or
just for getting more people to do this, right? So can we share what you are sharing on your,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Now, I'm no wizard when it comes to these sorts of computerized things. I just stand in front of the camera and chat. So, but yeah, you know, if you go to our Facebook page, we have a whole litany of these Facebook Lives that we've done, and I guess all you would have to do is grab the link and share it out. But absolutely, the more the merrier. And I've seen some of the things you all have done, and if I could get out from behind this, you know, some of the stuff I'm working on, it'd be nice to be able to cross share that stuff as well. So, but yeah, that's the best thing I know is to go to those and pick the ones you want.
Yeah.
And just share them. I'm happy to do that.
I was thinking of telling our social media people to actually take what you're sharing about the Texas Bio-Blitz and have them share it to everybody that's, you know, friends for us too, so that we get more people involved in this kind of.
No, that'd be great. In fact, we're doing a thing right now on Instagram. My coworker Tanya has. My crowd apparently is the 65 and older crowd of Facebook, so on our Instagram account, we are starting to finally post things, and Tanya's kind of taken that on, thankfully. And doing a really bang up job, but we're actually right now, we're actually sharing our account with AgriLife. And they're doing 4 weeks of postings on birds for us, and we're doing 4 weeks of pollinator postings.
Wow.
So that if you know, if we want to try to do something jointly like that, that'd be great, because the more that we combine our efforts, the bigger the impact. The people will pull from each of our own little, you know, windows, if you will. And cross-pollinate, I guess, is the word we're looking for there, right?
Exactly.
So we can cross-pollinate, and I think that helps just make people more aware that there really is a lot out there, because we get so zoned in on our little world that we live in. Expanding those horizons would be awesome. So yeah, any way we can do that. And hopefully maybe Corona will be gone and we can all get together and do the City Nature Challenge next late April.
I hope so. That'd be so great.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
All right. Well, my friends, it's been a wonderful night, and I am going to stop this recording here. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to shoot me that email. And really excited to work with you guys, and really hope that you'll get out there, get out into nature, and really hope that you'll participate in this Pollinator Festival, and hopefully you'll share this training with everybody. So have a wonderful night, folks.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gotta put out my fire.